A very good morning, dear students. We have done the first topic as far as creative writing course is concerned, that is SCC 1. We did media review, sorry. And now let's move ahead and begin with the first unit, that is literary forms. Now, you see, what are literary forms? In a layman's language, if we have to understand कि literary forms होते क्या हैं, so any form of work uh, to which you give a structure and you can assign to it a particular name that this has different structure, these are the various categories, these are the various types of a particular work, and these are the various features. So literary forms, they are like the roots, I must say, of the of any literary work for that matter. Okay, the literary family tree, I repeat, literary forms are like the roots of the literary family tree. Now they somewhere are these literary honors, the literary forms, right? And the honors, they are like the branches. These are your the branches, the main branches, from where comes in poetry, where comes in drama, you have fiction, and you have non-fiction. Now, as students of literature, when you have to study the various categories of the literary forms, why you have to study? Because you are dealing with the skill enhancement course which relates to creative writing, right? And all these categories, all these genres, poetry, drama, non-fiction, fiction, they all are genres. And from here you um, study their details, or not study their details, I was telling you why why this is in your course. Because as when you enter into writing something creative, you will obviously be writing a short story, or you'll be writing essays which will fall into the category of non-fiction, or you'll be writing poetry. All these things are creative activities which a person may perform. Okay, so that is the reason why, as students of English literature and language, you have to study this, right? So just remember, don't get confused with what I'm saying. You have to remember what literary forms are, and these are the basic four genres. When you will do your masters also in literature, you will learn that these are the four categories of which various papers you will study. You will study various poets, you'll study various dramatists, various novels, various essayist critics that you will study. Okay, so this presently, as far as the course is concerned, we will focus on what poetry is, what are its basic forms, what drama is, what are the basic categories or forms of drama, and so on and so forth. So, a literary form of any piece of literature is its structure, how it is constructed and organized. Okay. Then, as far as literature is concerned, there are mainly two types of literature. So, we are not going into detail of what literary form, the basic definition. You just have to understand that literary forms are the pieces of literature which can be divided into four genres which have been divided. Okay, they are already divided, and you study how it is constructed and how those structures are organized. That is what literary form is all about. And as far as literature is concerned, you have two types of literature: creative literature, which includes poems, novels, plays, essays, etc. And the aim of creative literature is to give you pleasure, the pleasure of reading, what we call. Then you have technical literature, which includes newspapers, articles, blogs, brochures, etc. And the basic aim of technical writing is providing you information or providing you ideas. So you can correlate the two, and you can understand the basic difference between creative literature and technical literature. All our literary forms, all our literary genres, they fall into the category of creative literature, and that is what we will dwell upon in this lecture. Now, the types of literature: creative literature, poetry. Poetry is literature which is based on interplay of words and rhythms. Drama, play for theater or reading. What is fiction? Fiction, stories, novels, etc. And the events which are described in fiction are generally unreal. That is why that is the reason of fiction. Fiction, something that is unreal. Then prose, which includes your non-fiction works like essays, criticism given by various writers, theories given by various linguists. That all falls into the category of non-fiction. Now, what is poetry? This is the first form that we are reading. That is poetry. Now, what is poetry? If generally we have to understand or talk about it, anything which can be sung or anything which has a rhyme to it, that becomes poetry. Okay, if there is this rhyme, students, small kids rhyme, twinkle twinkle little star, what I wonder what you are, up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. So there was a rhyming pattern that is going on. That is what poetry is. And if we talk technically, this writer, William Wordsworth, he is called the poet of nature. I have taught you a poem by him, those of you who were with me in compulsory English. Lines Written in Early Spring is the poem we read by William Wordsworth. Now, the poem where he has to which he applied this thought of his, this belief of his is in our course, that is Daffodils. We will be studying it after completing the lesson on poetry. So, what Wordsworth says, he says, poetry is spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings, the thoughts, the various ideas that are coming to your mind, right? Recollected in tranquility when you are sitting in a tranquil mind, in a silent mind, and you are not being distracted and disturbed by any outside elements, and there are certain things that come to your mind. And when those thoughts you scribble down in your book, that is what makes a poem, he says. Okay, you will understand it better when we will deal with the poem. So now, in layman's language, poetry is a form of text that follows a meter, a rhythm, and sorry, follows a meter and rhythm with each lines and syllables. Syllables are the words that are being used in the poem. Now, this is a technical definition. Meter kya hota hai? Yahan I've mentioned meter. It is a unit of rhythm in poetry. The pattern of the beats, also called foot, right? Each foot has a certain number of syllables. If there is one syllable, two syllable, that will be called diameter, right? If you have five syllables, it will be called pentameter. If there will be eight syllables, then it will be called octameter. और syllables भी जो होते हैं आपके, they are stressed and unstressed. That is something which you will study when you will study linguistics. तब आप पढ़ेंगे कि stress क्या होता है, intonation क्या होता है, all these details related to poetry. But for now, you should know that any form of text that follows a meter and a rhythm, that is known as, or that is what we call as poetry. Now, what does poetry do? It presents a situation or depicts a scene, as in Wordsworth's Daffodils. A poem often has rhyme and meter. These are the features, kind of features also, and what basically poetry does. Rhyme is repetition of similar sounds. So, twinkle, twinkle, little star, oh, I wonder what you are. Meter is basic rhythmic structure of a verse or lines in verse. Rhythmic structure एक pattern follow होता है. जिस sound से first line end हो रही है उसी sound से maybe third line end हो, और first और थर्ड लाइन सेम हो, उसका rhythmic structure, third or fourth line same ho, a pattern is developed, basically what it means. Then poetry expresses a feeling. Poetry deals with the serious issues or problems in human life. For example, the man he killed पढ़ी है आपने फर्स्ट ईयर में. What it deals with that, uh, with the idea of the futility of war. War is futile. And that is what Thomas Hardy is trying to tell us in this poem. He says nobody is gaining anything out of it. We are in the battlefield because we have to make money. I became an army man. The man who is standing in front of me, he's my enemy just because we are on a battlefield. Otherwise, had we met somewhere else, we would have become friends. So, poetry is something which deals with a serious issue or problem. And next, it offers some ideas. For example, in Ozymandias, what does it tell us in Ozymandias? It tells us about the futility of our achievements. If we keep bragging about the achievements we have made, one day or the other, it will come to an end. There will be of no use. You, as a person, will be remembered how you were. We remember Ozymandias um, as a what should I say? A king, an arrogant king, right? Whereas if we talk of the artist who made his structure, he is remembered as a person of great ability that he had of carving even the worst feelings, or I must say the bad qualities, the arrogant nature of Ozymandias in his sculpture. So that is what all poetry does. Daffodil ka jo maine mention kiya hai, it will be more clear when I'll deal with the poem. Now there are two categories of poetry. एक होती है subjective poetry and the other is objective poetry. Now when you are writing about yourself, बड़ा simple सी चीज़ है, definition जो वहाँ दी है वो आप समझिए. But apart from that, try to understand subjective. I am the subject. I am writing about my personal feelings. That becomes subjective poetry. When I am an observer, जब मैं किसी और चीज़ को देख रहा हूँ और मैं उसके बारे में लिख रहा हूँ, that becomes your objective poetry. Okay, subjective is when you're writing about yourself or you're writing about your personal feelings or something. That is what subjective poetry is. Now let us read what it says. When a poet becomes a mere observer and writes what he sees around him, he writes that is called objective poetry. When a poet expresses, his own personal feelings or projects his own self on a scene, he is writing subjective poetry. So these are basic differences between the two kinds of poetry that are there. Now, most of the good poems, this is a point you have to note. Most of the good poems are partly subjective and partly objective. A poet expresses even his personal experience in a way that sounds to be impersonal or universal. For instance, a man he killed. It is subjective when the poet says, had he and I but met. An objective aspect sets in when he says, yes, quaint and curious the war is. Obviously, in the first half of the poem, the poet is sharing his experience. Thomas Hardy, he's sharing his experience, but then he comes uh, to a conclusion and he's giving you a, what should I say, a general outcome that war is something curious, war is quiet, war is strange, war is not required. So what are we trying to learn here is that good poems, they are subjective as well as objective. So don't get confused with this. It is just till now, uh, This is like the basis, the root of what we are gonna actually reap further, understand further. These are the foregrounding, let me put it like this. Okay, now comes the main aspect. The first unit, what it deals with is the forms of poetry.